Hey, I'm Paul Scheer. I co-host How Did This Get Made and Unspooled. The first time I visited Earwolf, there was no Earwolf. I mean, Earwolf was basically just a small recording studio in the middle of like a band rehearsal space. Now, I don't know if you know what a band rehearsal space is, but basically bands rent out rooms to basically rock out for their big live performances. And we were recording podcasts in the middle of that. I remember we couldn't schedule our podcasts like too late in the day because that's when the band started coming in. So if you did that, you'd have to compete against just like people like wailing on the drums or just like rocking out on bass. And we actually even had a window in that studio that faced the street and you just hear police sirens. It was not an ideal podcasting scenario. But what made it worse was this is at the point when no one had a podcast. No one knew what a podcast was. You had to really explain it. And then you'd say, come on our podcast. And to get them to this like really kind of scary rehearsal studio, they were literally like walking by halfway houses and stepping over crack vials to get into the space. But thankfully, we had amazing guests when we first started out, and it grew and we got out of there. But I remember I thought, that's it. That's what podcasting is. We've made it. And now we have fancy offices. We got bubbly water. I mean, things are going really good. I think one of my favorite guests was Spike Lee for Unspooled. He was so energetic, so engaged. He loved talking about this movie, and it felt almost as if he was still in the moment of the reaction to Do the Right Thing when it came out. Like, he talked so much shit. It was hilarious. And I think I love that about podcasting because you get this really familiar conversation going. Sometimes, for the worse, when we had an actor from Superman 1 and 2, the original Supermans, and he came on stage at a live show that we were doing with Damon Lindelof and started revealing some very big things. Personal things about Margot Kidder and Christopher Reeve and about finances and how like he was involved with the mob, and then in the middle of the show revealed that he knew who killed Kennedy. It was crazy. We had to edit, I would say, 90% of his interview out, but I feel like the audience at Largo really got an earful that night. And I think that's also one of the things I love about podcasting and doing it live is that we try to create a unique experience for a live audience so it feels like the intimacy that you have when you're listening alone with your headphones. Earwolf fans are great because they're just not fans of your podcast, they're fans of the network. And I think the network does have this common sensibility, right? You get a certain level of humor. And I feel like there's a bond between all the performers on Earwolf, but also with their fans. And what I've seen them do, from the Facebook groups to the homemade shirts to the organizing. I mean, I remember at one of the live shows, someone called me John. And for the next live show, someone had made these amazing stickers that said John on them. Like they are a unit that, I mean, you put them to anything. I mean, they should be solving this COVID crisis. They could come up with a vaccine like that. You know, Earwolf to me, and this is gonna sound corny, but I think is a family. I think there's something about the way that this network came up. It came up at a time when podcasting was not on the tip of everyone's tongue. It was not a thing that was going to be amazingly profitable. It was a thing that people were doing because they were creative and they wanted an outlet. And I think that Earwolf has continued to curate really interesting and cool voices to make shows that feel incredibly unique. I come from a live comedy background, and I feel like this is the closest you can get to that live comedy experience by listening to shows on Earwolf. It's funny people doing things that they're passionate about. Some are long, some are short, and some of my favorites, they don't even really exist anymore, but I love them for the short period of time that they were. Pilot episodes are messy, right? Because you're trying so hard to make sure that you have a show and you have all these segments. And I think if you listen to our first couple of episodes, we sound like we're doing a show. And I think what podcasting has become this more conversational connection to an audience, and that's what people want to hear. And I feel like our show has evolved over the 10 years that we've been doing it, to be like a true hangout with friends. I mean, that's how we decided we wanted to do the show. The show happened because Jason, June, and I were talking about a crappy movie, and we're like, this is a podcast. And I think a lot of the times when you first start recording a podcast, you think it needs to be even more than that. But I think the sign of a good podcast, and many of the podcasts at Earwolf have this, which is just like, it's just a chance to hang out with your friends. It's just a moment to be around people that you like hearing from. And we try to capture that in our show. And I think it's really funny when you go back and listen to us clearly going more on the radio side of podcasting than actually the conversational podcast side. I feel like you laughing during a show is the worst thing that you can do, because it's an audio medium, you have to kind of hold it back. But Jason and June and I love that we've been doing the show for 10 years, and we will find these moments where we will just stop the show and just, giggle like madmen. There's been so many moments, whether it's June asking like, what is a Street Fighter? Whether it's Jason finding out like that I used to carry a concealed toy gun on me because I thought I was a secret agent. Like, these moments bring me so much joy, and I feel like Comedy Bang Bang is another one of those shows where you go on there and everyone's trying so hard to keep a straight face, but you just can't. You start to break down, and it's kind of the joy of being able to cover the mic, hold your head away, so the audience doesn't know that you're dying, and Scott's always so good at like kind of turning that screw and making you talk through it, so the audience kind of hears that crick in your voice, because there's no stopping and starting. You have to kind of roll through it. But I find those moments to be so cathartic, and especially during the quarantine, to just be able to sit and laugh during a show and laugh at each other. It's the closest you can get to hanging out, and I think that's been one of the things we've been hearing so much from the people who listen to our show. There have been so many amazing podcasts on Earwolf. Truly epic ones. One of the ones that I was so happy that someone let me do was the Sylvester Stallone show, where I was going to interview Sylvester Stallone with your questions, ask him anything you want, but he never showed up. And that's the kind of thing that you could do at Earwolf, where I basically said to, whoever was in charge at that point, I think it was Adam Sachs, like, can I do this? And he's like, will you tell people that like Stallone is coming onto the show? And I was like, absolutely. And he's like, yes, let's go do it. And I feel like there is that element of this network where you can kind of just run with a really insane idea. Bob Duca's Daily Affirmation show was one of my absolute favorite shows on the network. I think what I love about Earwolf too is there's a sense of collaboration. There's a sense of, you come on my show, I'll come on your show, I'm a fan of you, come over here. Like, I come from a live comedy background, and oftentimes you're jumping on other people's shows and they're jumping on your shows, and you get this like kind of shorthand. And one of the things I love about Earwolf is we have that. You can kind of say, hey, yo, is this racist? Can you come on Unspooled? Let's talk about this. And then I'll go over there. And you start to meet people, and you can kind of help people even get an idea out. I feel like I've talked to so many people who had just an inkling of an idea and actually created like amazing podcasts. Bitch Sesh has been one of my favorite shows to listen to, because just listening to Casey and Danielle and what they've become in the Bravo community. They are essentially, I'm going to say it, I think they're bigger than Andy Cohen. I think the thing that I've learned the most about podcasting is to trust your voice, to trust your instincts, to trust, what you think is funny will translate. And that's something that I think we're always trying to think and do in all the work that we do in the world, but sometimes there are people that will block you from getting your voice out there. You have to fit in this box. And podcasting allows you to really make your own box, because you will find a group of people that like it. And if you don't, at least you got to do the thing, and maybe the people were right. There was no room for that. But oftentimes, I think having an unfiltered voice, you will find there are people out there that want to hear that voice. You can't talk about Earwolf without talking about the amazing producers and the engineers who make these shows possible. The support team at Earwolf, they're the reason why any show is successful, hands down. They are passionate, they care, and I love hanging out with them. They are a part of the team. In many ways, on How Did This Get Made and Unspooled, they are literally on-air personalities, and I think you see that on Hollywood Handbook and even Comedy Bang Bang. It is this idea that like we are all a part of this bigger thing, and I For me, it's one of the best parts of going to Earwolf when I have to record is just seeing all these people that are fun, competent, and just really lovely to be around. You know, Earwolf has changed a lot from the very beginning, from the moment that someone asked me, do I want to do a podcast, to today. But I think the one through line that's there for Earwolf is this connection to community. How can we take what we're doing on stage and put it to an audience that can't get to see the shows in New York and LA? And I feel like that's what Earwolf has actually done so well. They've taken the best in comedy talent from New York and LA, and they have created this network that supports comedians and actually I think helps raise their careers. It's been a pleasure to kind of be a part of that and see it grow from its very inception and become fans of all these people that I didn't know before or people that I saw maybe outperform once or twice. I feel like everyone's there to really support each other, and I love that. We listen to each other's stuff and we support each other's stuff.